Mr. David Strait with us tonight. To me, he's one of the foremost people that knows what we need to know and how to do it. So we'll turn the time over to David Strait from Bend, Oregon.
So can everybody hear? No, he's good. I heard it go up as I was talking. The biggest thing is we got a lot of different people in the room at a lot of different levels in this process. And the most important thing is, like any school, we've got to have the basics. We've got to have the basics of what we're talking about, or we can't move forward. So I'm going to try and cover a heck of a lot in 3 hours. I don't know if I can do it. Usually I talk a lot longer than that. I'm going to be tripping over that, I'm sure.
Excuse me, David, just a second. We'll take a break at 7:30 for those that are worried about that, like me.
Okay. You just tell me when. Okay. So one of the biggest problems I've seen with people across the United States is when they start getting into some of the groups, the Patriot groups, the 3%er groups, all kinds of different groups all over the country, constitutional groups, is they tend to abandon one jurisdiction, jump into the other. And that's kind of a big problem, because all three jurisdictions have their place in what we do. Okay? And a lot of the Patriot groups and the 3%ers and those kind of people, I love them all, because I love everybody who stands up and says something, because those are the people that are not only looking out for themselves, but they're looking out for others. So the more people stand up, the happier I am, okay? But a lot of the Patriot groups and the 3%ers, they've got a few things backwards, like I had when I was recently out of the military. You know, you live your whole life towards patriotism. You go to the baseball games, you sing the song, you pledge your allegiance. But until you start learning and you have a real deeper knowledge and understanding about it, you begin to realize that you're pledging your allegiance to the very organization that is terrorizing, the tyranny that's terrorizing. Now, is it bad? Was it created improperly? No. I believe our founding fathers were some of the most intelligent people in the world, and they taught us a lot. But I've asked hundreds of attorneys over the years and judges, what does the law mean? Where did its origins of the law come from? How did we arrive at this thing called law that holds its thumb down over us, makes us obey? Aren't we free in this country? How did we get to this point where everybody that I talk to is having a problem somewhere in their life? And I get some pretty crappy answers from attorneys and judges who you'd think would know what they're talking about, but they don't. One of the things, if you ever want to have some fun, go to some of the law schools, sit down with the administration, tell them you'd like to change careers and get your law degree, and ask them for a list of classes it takes to get a law degree, and then start analyzing those classes. 30% of them are electives. The rest is policy and procedures of the court, federal rules of civil procedure, federal rules of criminal procedure, how to pass the bar exam, and everything else is pretty much language classes. They call it legalese, so you can have a word for it. And what you learn is it doesn't matter if you're in Japan speaking Japanese, or in Germany speaking German, or anywhere else in the world. It doesn't matter what the language is in each one of those countries. Different words in the same language, like in English, determine which jurisdiction you're in. So the words we use get us in trouble because they don't teach us the differences in those words, in that language. So it gets us in trouble with the law. So to answer the question, I started researching. And in Genesis 1:26 through 28, God gave man dominion over the land and everything in it, the air and everything in it, and the water and everything in it. He gave man dominion over all three, and these became jurisdictions of law that were set aside by the Vatican in what we know as the first three testamentary trusts. So in the first trust, the Vatican in 1455 set aside the jurisdiction of the land. And if you know anything about trusts and trust law, it's all ecclesiastical or canon law. It's the jurisdiction of the earth that regulates trusts. So, in the jurisdiction of the land, they made King Ferdinand of Spain the trustee. And King Ferdinand was a good, honest man, good Christian man, and he said, no, I'm not going to accept it. It belongs to all mankind. God gave it to all mankind in Genesis 1. And so he passed a trusteeship to the jurisdiction of the land to mankind. All mankind in the world. That became known as common law because it was common to all of us. Okay? The jurisdiction of the air, the Vatican, they retained the trusteeship for themselves. They became the trustees of the jurisdiction of the air. And that became ecclesiastical law or canon law. Ecclesiastical law has to do with heaven and hell and lost souls and how to live righteously and not go to the devil and all kinds of things. But it also is trusts. So this is love thy neighbor and do no harm. This is trust law. The jurisdiction of the water, the trusteeship was given to the monarchies of Great Britain. It became known as the Crown Inc., the world's first corporation, the Crown Inc. Today, that is owned by the Queen of England, the Queen of Holland. And it became admiralty law or commerce law. Yes. All the law that we operate in today, the UCC code, the USC code, the IRS code, all admiralty law. This country changed. It was founded on common law, changed to admiralty law, 1934. Okay? And then we adopted the UCC and other various forms of admiralty law. But that became contract law. There has to be a contract. Well, the problem is, there's different types of contracts. And a true contract has to have 8 elements to the contract. Okay? But these attorneys, they'll do a contract that's really just a tacit agreement. And we'll talk about tacit agreement in a second. So, contract law, 3 testamentary trusts, set aside the first 3 jurisdictions. There's only 3 jurisdictions. The Bar Association uses the word jurisdiction to confuse the general public. So you don't learn this. They'll say it's in the city's jurisdiction, or the state's jurisdiction, or the federal government's jurisdiction, or some agency's jurisdiction. All they're really doing is replacing the word venue for the word jurisdiction. It's in the city's venue, or it's in the county's venue. And I call them on it in court, and they go, oh yeah, you're right. Why don't you just say it right the first time, right? So, juris means law. That's what that word means, law. Diction, what do you do with a diction? You look words up in the dictionary. Diction means words. The word you use determines the jurisdiction you're in. Okay? So, you can travel freely upon the roadways in your automobile or carriage with nothing more than your passport, and you have all the protection in the world. Your passport, if you pull your passport out, would be the same pocket that this was in. If you pull your passport out, the very first paragraph of your passport says, the Secretary of State of the United States of America. Now, doesn't that person have a little more clout than your police officer? Okay? A little higher authority. Hereby request all whom it may concern to permit the citizen or national of the United States named herein to pass without delay or hindrance, and in the cause of need to give all lawful aid and protection. What does that say? When a police officer walks up, well, first of all, he puts his red lights on behind you, right? You're going down the highway a little fast, he puts his red lights on behind you. He actually is committing a felony the minute he flips his lights on. He is creating an emergency where none existed, and that is a felony. It's against the law. But they know you don't know that. They didn't tell you. But he created a felony where none existed. Hi, guys. So, he walks up to the window, and you roll your window down, and he says, "Can I have your driver's license, appropriate insurance, and registration?" And if you just gather them all up and hand them to him, he's got tacit agreement of you being a citizen. Just from the mere fact that you handed it to him when he asked. Why? They're taught how to get tacit agreement of these three things within 60 seconds. And so is a judge when you go to court. And I'll do the court version here in a minute. The word citizen means employee. You're offered a benefits package. See, after the Revolutionary War, the king said, those British soldiers who would like to stay will leave here on these shores to provide the free men of America with essential governmental services. They will be citizens of America. Citizens. Employees left to provide the free men with essential governmental services. Okay? The word person. Word person means entity or office of. Person was created by your birth certificate. So I'm going to tell you a little story about Mom. Mom walks into a foundling hospital. She's about ready to give birth. And all hospitals and churches in the United States were designated as foundling hospitals in 1912. The word foundling is a safe place to abandon a child. That's the word foundling. Happened in England. Everything that happens in this country happened in England about 100 years before.
Is that F-O-U-N-D-L-I-N-G?
It is. Perfect. So, the hospitals were designated as foundling hospitals. The mother walks in, she's declared indigent and a pauper. That makes me mad a little bit when I talk about it. She goes through childbirth. All she wants to do is get home to her bed with her brand new baby, right? That's all she wants. Well, she's just gone through a period of duress, a major medical procedure called childbirth, probably under the influence of painkillers, and they hand her some papers to fill out and tell her, this is just to give your baby a name and get her registered. See? Well, Mom, under duress, signs it as an informant. An informant. The legal definition of the word informant is someone who gives up someone else to another. She just signed away title to her child, to the state.
Does it have informant under the name when you sign it?
It's on every birth certificate.
Says you're signing as an informant?
Sure.
It's the way disclosed?
Yep, that part of it. It's not all of it. Wait till I'm done. See how mad you get. Okay? So, it's sent to the Department of Human Resources and registered, bonded, insured, a CUSIP number is created. A CUSIP number is an investment control number regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. It is on bond paper. They bonded it for a bank. So your birth certificate is a bond paper, and on the bottom of it somewhere there's usually a bank name, and the letters so small you can barely read them. And if you were born between 1933 and 1975, you were bonded for $630,000 and insured for $1 million the day you were registered at birth. Okay? If you were born after 1975, in 1975 they raised the amounts, you were bonded for $1 million and insured for $2 million. It doesn't end there. So maybe around age 5 you get a Social Security number. About the time you have to go to school, you need your Social Security number. Social Security number is also a CUSIP number, an investment control number regulated by the SEC. Okay. It's a subservient slave ID number, not the Social Security number. Social Security, the correct name for that is subservient slave. Okay. So they create another CUSIP number. Well, they create another bond and another insurance policy. Then you grow up, 17, sign up for registration. All boys anyway have been signed up for registration for a number of years, and some of them go into the military. So they receive a military ID number, which just so happens to be another CUSIP number. And in the military, you're bonded again, and your insurance is a $5 million policy this time because they plan on you getting knocked off. Okay?
So who bonds you?
The United States government, through the Treasury.
Is that what the Bank of England?
No. We'll talk about that. On my birth certificate, it's American State Bank. Some people, it's the Great Northern Bank, on and on, various banks. They just go to the bank for a bond. Okay? And we'll talk about what the bond is and that kind of stuff. So we'll get into it. But if you get an advanced degree in college, like I have several times, those student ID numbers are also CUSIP numbers. See, they figure the more educated you are, the more money over your lifetime you earn, they bond and insure you again. So some of us have 5, 6, 7, 8 life insurance policies on us, in our name. And every time they create a CUSIP number, that's all sold in the open market, buying and selling it. I can go to a website and type in any of your Social Security numbers, your birth certificate number, your military ID numbers, and I can show you what companies are buying and selling you today. And you know what? It doesn't end there. Even when you die, your Cesta QB Trust, can I write that down somewhere? For short, they call it the PCT, the Public Charitable Trust, because we give it to the government in charity, I think. But anyway, so it's all bundled in the Cesta QB Trust. The first Cesta QB Trust Act was in the year 1666. 666, maybe? Anyway, it's the Cesta QB Trust Act. The United States adopted it in 1933. Okay? And everybody's birth got registered ever since. Bought and insured, sold on the open market. There's 3 ways the government can get at the money in that trust. And that trust lives on in perpetuity, forever and ever and ever. But something happens to it when they receive your death certificate. We'll talk about that in just a second. But it lives on in perpetuity. Now, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. So, anyway, with the Cesta QB Trust, we literally, every single person in this room is worth millions and millions of dollars. Now, up until a few years ago, I knew it existed because I read canon law. Talks all about it throughout canon law, all about Cesta QB Trust. I read the Cesta QB Trust Acts of 1666 and 1707, and we've had all these acts over the years, and I read them all. And so I knew about them. I knew they existed, but it was very difficult to prove.
How does immigration, just more people that bring in here to raise up their numbers?
Well,
I'm just curious.
it does, but that's just a transfer of assets. See, because any United Nations country, all 174 of them, doesn't matter if you're in Canada or wherever, Australia, Japan, all 174 countries operate under the United Nations, and they all do the same thing now. They've all standardized. Okay?
Even Iceland?
No.
Okay.
Or Bulgaria, or there's 203 countries in the world, 174 of them right now. So I'm amazed because it used to be in the 190 range, and a lot of countries like Iceland pulled out of it. Bulgaria pulled out of it. So there's countries. I got some air conditioning. I wore a way too warm a shirt, I guess. Woke up and saw it was raining. Anyway, all of us have this huge investment account. And I knew about it, but I didn't know how big it truly was. And my very first federal case was a young lady named Jamie Faye Cobat. And she's a grandmother and had an autistic son and went through a divorce, and her ex-husband happened to work for a police department as a mechanic and knew everybody in town, and later married the district attorney and was pretty connected, but he was kind of narcissistic, and he beat her up a few times and stuff, and she moved 3 hours away over the mountains, and she had an autistic son with him, and they had visitation rights back and forth and all that stuff. But over a period of about 10 or 12 years, she had 4 police reports against him for coming over her house, taking her son, beating her up, all kinds of stuff. One time, he kicked the door in at 2 o'clock in the morning, went right in the kid's bedroom, took the kid, put him in the car, started back down. She runs out in her pajamas, she puts her hands on the trunk to stop the car. The table's not very good. Well, I didn't push any harder. Anyway, and he ran over with the car. Right over the top of her. She fell down and he just went right over the top of her. And because she was a single mom raising an autistic son, she was eligible for her Social Security. And she got Social Security benefits on him. And it was pre-SSI, they call it. And then she had gotten some TANF benefits, which are state food stamp benefits, and medical. Because her son was going to the doctor all the time. Anyway, after her ex-husband married the DA, they did something a little crooked. When the kid went to visit, they registered him for school. Not that he ever attended there. He went home. But they used the school registration as proof that the kid was living with him, and then found her for fraud for receiving those benefits when he was not in her house. Now, there's nothing illegal about what she did at all. I mean, I've checked all the laws on it. I've checked with the agencies on it. Nothing illegal. But her evidence, their attorneys, when they filed the motion to put her evidence in, the judge suppressed it. When her attorney asked for witnesses to testify, they suppressed all of her witnesses. This is known as railroading, to lead somebody down a narrow path or rail to a predetermined outcome or conclusion. And then when she finally went to trial, the prosecutor spent 3.5 days prosecuting her, making her look like the worst person on earth. Not one single first-hand witness, just a letter from her ex-husband. He didn't even show up in court. One letter. No real proof. No nothing. Denied all her evidence, denied all her witnesses. She got, her trial was 4 days, 3.5 days the prosecution presented their case. She got 2 hours, the jury deliberated, came back in about an hour, got her guilty on all 4 counts. I met her about 30 days later, after the trial, after she had been found guilty, but before her sentencing. Okay? And we went to work. Her and her husband came up in a motorhome parked in the Walmart parking lot, and every day I drove over there and I taught her, started teaching her, started going through her evidence. I got 300 pieces of evidence on her behalf, including affidavits of witness testimonies that the court during her trial denied, but I got put onto the record. See? And then we show up for sentencing, and we went through sentencing. In the very first sentencing, we got 2 of her charges dropped immediately because we kind of paid him in advance. All right? He knows this story because I spent time telling him, but very good. Paid him in advance, so we get into the sentencing here, and I said, wait a minute, these are paid in full. You can't charge somebody for something that's already paid. So he dropped 2 counts right away. And then he suspended sentencing for a month, and we went after him some more, and so on and so forth. Now I do it kind of all in one shot, what I used to do in little pieces. Okay? But, make a long story short, all 4 of her felonies went away, and she's home today, and she calls me every day and tell me thank you because she was going to get 20 years. So, can it work? Yeah. What did we do? First thing we did is file an affidavit of repudiation of citizenship with the State Department. That's what the United States Code says you have to do. Most of these people that are trying to say they're American state nationals have never done that, therefore they are not American state nationals. Now I'm going to qualify that. They really are. They never were citizens in the first place. See? But the government holds us to a tacit agreement of this. So I told you how a police officer gets your tacit agreement of these 3 things in the first 60 seconds. He says, give me your driver's license, proof of registration, and insurance. You hand them to him. You got a tacit agreement that you're a citizen. All he's got to do is look at your driver's license and your name spelled in all caps. It's got your address on there with your zip code. Now he has a tacit agreement that you're a person or resident. The legal definition of the word resident is someone there temporarily to do business. Stupid. Someone there temporarily to do business. By the very use of your zip code, the federal government put you in Washington, D.C. There's 325 million of us that all live in Washington, D.C. Every time we use a zip code to put it on the letter. We just reside, as you guys are, in Utah, temporarily to do business. So now they have full jurisdiction over you. There's nothing you can do about it.
You were about to say the 3 ways that they can take the money.
I know. Okay. Thank you for reminding me. The 3 ways they take the money: they find you guilty of a misdemeanor or felony. They can give it your money. They take your kid because they own it. They have title. Do you understand what happens when CPS knocks on the door? They got a couple of police officers, sometimes in California, a SWAT team, and they kick your door in, they walk in and they steal your child. 99 times out of 100, they don't even have a warrant. And even if they did have a warrant, it's an invalid warrant. Why? Because our Constitution says it must be from an Article 1 or an Article 3 court. The warrant must state the address to be searched, the specific location to be searched, like I'm going to search her bedroom or his bedroom, and it's supposed to say what they're searching for. Drugs. Things like that, okay? Whatever. And that ain't even good enough. It's supposed to be backed up by a sworn affidavit or claim, sworn under the penalty of perjury, or a sworn testimony in a court of law under the penalty of perjury, and then it's a valid warrant. They show up with something that's about as good as a blank piece of paper, doesn't mean diddly squat in the law, and they hand it to you and they just walk in the door. You don't even get a chance to read it, right? No, you're supposed to have time to read it too, in full. They're supposed to wait for you, but do they? No. And I guarantee it's not even from a de jure court. There's only two de jure courts. State Supreme Court, Federal Supreme Court, Article I Court, and Article III Court. That's it. All these other courthouses are all privately owned corporations. In fact, the one here in Cache County, there's 7 counties, all owned by the same guy. The headquarters of the corporation is in Naganita. You call it government? Really? Okay. What is the police force? I hope somebody in here is an attorney or a prosecutor or a judge or a state legislature, because I've loved standing in front of the state legislatures. I've spoken at the state capitals, several of them, and letting them know the bullshit that we're under. And I don't mean to cuss, but I get kind of mad. Once you study it as much as I do, you really learn the true amount of the fraud. We haven't had a de jure government in this country since March 22nd of 1861. In fact, really just a little bit before that, when a gentleman named Abe Lincoln took office. See, Abe Lincoln is not the wonderful president that tells no lies and chopped down a cherry tree that we're out led to believe, right? Honest Abe. Little children are taught to put on a play 7 years ago, right? You know the Gettysburg Address was a trust. If you know what trusts are, what the elements of a trust are, you can read the Gettysburg Address. And it was all laid out as a public trust. Okay? Lincoln was a pretty good attorney. But, you know, he was the governor of Illinois before he ran for president. And he was a follower of Karl Marx in 1848, and he ran for president several times and lost. Why? Because the people didn't want him to be a president, because he was a communist. If you read letters and journals of people who lived during the time, that's what they said about it. And he passed several communistic laws. Lips are sticking together. And when he was governor of Illinois. That's why Illinois is still screwed up today. Okay? And that's why the United States is still screwed up today. You know, I grew up to worship Abe Lincoln. I thought he was awesome. And the little kids are taught persistence. You know, he ran for president 6 times, but he finally made it. So you guys just hang in there. So they're taught persistence by Abe Lincoln, by our school system. Everything that's taught in school is a lie. I can go through their historical textbooks and show you that it's all lies. Why? Well, now I'm getting off the subject, I'll tell you in a minute. So, they get this tacit agreement. So how do they get a tacit agreement in a court of law? Let's just pretend it's a courtroom. I'm the judge, okay? The court starts at 10 in the morning. You guys are all sitting there at 9:45, twirling your thumbs, waiting for the judge to walk in. He turns the doorknob to walk in, and the bailiff says, "All rise for the Honorable Judge, David Strait." And everybody jumps up off their seat, stands up. You just got a tacit agreement there, you're a citizen. Because employees stand when their boss walked in the room. Isn't he our public servant? Didn't we elect him to be a public servant? Or maybe he was appointed to be a public servant, depending on the court. Okay? We, the people, are the boss. We don't stand when the judge walks in the room. First of all, he's not a judge. Not in any of these local courts, only in the state Supreme Court and the federal Supreme Court. Then they're judges. And in that room, I will call him a judge, or Your Honor. But in the lower courts, it's Mr. Administrator. Okay, and I'll tell you why. What is the legal definition of the word court? If you look at the legal dictionary, like Black's Law, 4th edition, or Beauvair's, it says see bank, see post office. All courts in the United States were created as United States District Postal Courts. If you walk into a post office, you can buy a money order that is backed by actual silver and gold, real money, today. Because all post offices, Benjamin Franklin set them up as banks. He set up the post office in the United States. So all post offices were banks, all courts were banks and post offices. If you look up the word judge, it says see banker, see postmaster. But if you look up the word attorney, it says see actor. See actor. Might as well be Brad Pitt or Tom Hanks or Tom Selleck. It doesn't matter. And a lot of them win some Oscars. They're good at it. They became excellent wordsmiths. Okay? They learned the language. They spent years in law school learning language. And it even has a name. It's called legalese. Doesn't matter what language it's in. English, Japanese, French. Doesn't matter. Okay? Each of these jurisdictions uses its own words. And if you learn the language and you say the right words, you stay in that jurisdiction, you take ownership of it. Mankind was given the dominion, we have dominion over all three jurisdictions. So you learn language, like traveling upon the roadways in an automobile or carriage. A car, the word car is short for carriage. That is this jurisdiction. What is this one? I'm driving or operating a motor vehicle. Now, who has to have a driver's license? Anybody know who has to have a driver's license? I know you do. You've taken this class before a couple times. Okay, it is somebody driving an Uber, a taxi, a bus driver, school bus driver, somebody employed to do it or charging a fee for their service. Hauling passengers for hire is what they call it in law. Passengers for hire. A truck driver, somebody hauling goods or services for resale in international commerce. Not the ones that go from Salt Lake to Logan and back to Salt Lake to Logan again and back to Salt Lake. You know, it's ones going to Idaho or to California. Interstate commerce. Each state is an independent nation state, united for a cause, so that our federal government could provide the states, the people thereof, we the people, with 19 essential governmental services. 18 of them are clearly listed in the Constitution, and one is in the preamble. But there's 19 essential governmental services that we agreed to pay for, and they agreed to provide. How many do they provide us with? Thousands, and they force us at gunpoint to pay for it. Right? So how do they get at the trust money? Misdemeanor or felony? If they take your kid, you can have both the husband and the wife's trust money. And if you die, when you die and they receive a death certificate, your estate is balanced. Let's talk for a second about Federal Reserve notes. Okay, they're called legal tender. If you read books like Modern Money Mechanics, put out by the Federal Reserve in Chicago, wrote that book. But each reserve writes their own book. They all say the same stuff. So read one, read them all. Okay, legal tender. Tender does not pay a debt. It tenders it to a later date. All debts are kept track of. Banks keep track. The Federal Reserve gets a statement. It gets attached to your custom numbers. When you die and they receive a death certificate, the estate is settled. All your debts are finally paid. Do the companies you have the debts with get paid along the way? Yeah, because they just go use this with somebody else that they're doing business with. So they're not injured. But the IMF, they just print up the money for about 3 cents. And it goes on their books, your estate gets settled. So the millions of dollars that you have in the Cessna QV trust by the time you die, that gets balanced out. balance sheet. The debits and credit gets balanced out, the state probate settled, the state settled, and a sweep account is created. Trust lives on in perpetuity, lives on forever. They just create a sweep account. What is a sweep account? Anybody know? You go to your bank, you open a checking account, a savings account. You say, I'd like my savings account to be listed as a sweep account. You write a check or something, asks for a payment of, say, $97. They take $100 out of your checking account. They move $3 of it into savings, and people use it as a forced savings plan. So this remains, the balance remains the same, but it's still invested out there on the American economy. And by the time you die, it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And the sweep account is taken and it goes right in the treasury. They call that off-book funds. And if you look at the GAC reports and others, you'll start to see where the money is. See, our federal budget is about $4 trillion. And out of income taxes they collect, corporate and business, personal, they collect about $900 billion. Where do you get the rest? Well, there's almost $3 trillion left. Where'd you get it?
The Chinese.
No, they don't. Chinese have the same problem in Princeton? No. They take it out of our SSQB trust. In fact, the Department of Fiscal Services says the Department of Justice is the biggest contributor to the federal budget by far. By far. In fact, the $990 billion isn't even there. All that went directly to the IMF to pay for interest on our bankruptcy. So no taxes go to our federal budget. That just goes to IMF for interest on our bankruptcy. Everything of the federal budget comes out of SSQB Trust. Now, the Department of Fiscal Services says the Department of Justice is the biggest contributor by far. Where do they get their money? Our court system throughout the United States. See, when I was doing Jamie Faye Kobat's case, we started researching fidelity, and I showed him all the documentation this morning. And we went through all the paperwork, and I showed him all the treasury bills that had been cashed in, and it was 300 here at 25,000 a piece, and 100 here at 10,000 a piece, and pages after pages after pages of them as they were liquidating her trust, so that they could take money out of her account, and it was liquid capital when the court found her guilty and sentenced her. And we saw exactly how much her account was worth. You remember? It was $28 billion.
Yeah, something like that.
And then it went up to $35 billion because we extended the sentencing date. This one little grandma. That's how much was in her account. You see that $630,000 note, and then the $1 million note on the Social Security, and then she got a degree, another $1 million. Those bonds, over a long period of time of 50 plus years, kept growing and growing and growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. United States Treasury bonds is the full faith and credit of the United States government based upon each one of our labor for the subservient slaves. If that doesn't make you bad, I don't know what else will.
It sounds like a pipe dream, but when you see the real figures, I mean, we never heard anything about any of this.
No. But see, I can show you all the documentation and all the, I went through pages and pages of documentation with him and Jim Smart. So,
we need to confront some of our leaders about some of this stuff and show them we know what the hell's going on, because, what's it say, the suck's got the truth sense.
Well, you don't think they don't know?
A lot of them don't know.
no, here's the thing. If you're going to pull off a con on somebody, let's say you're one of the Council of 13, and you're going to pull off a con on somebody, or a large group of people, let's just say it takes 50 people that you've got to hire to pull off that con. If you told them what the entire con is, they're not going to do it. Why? Because people are basically good, honest, moral people. That's been my experience throughout my lifetime. Most of you guys are good, honest, moral people. There's a few of them I question, but I'm kidding. But anyway, they are. So if you told them what the con was and that you're going to be ripping off a whole bunch of people, they'd all quit and go home and nobody would do it. But if you compartmentalize them and you give the police officer his little job duties, and you give the court clerk their little job duty, and the county somebody their little job duty, and the judge a little job duty, and the attorney's a little job duty, and so on and so forth, right up through your state legislature. Now all of a sudden you have all of them who can go to work every day, get their paycheck, go home at night, smile with their kids, and sleep well, and go back to work the next day because they don't know the big picture of the con. And let me tell you something, the government hides everything in plain sight. Everything. They publish everything. But they'll publish a little bit here, and there's one piece of the puzzle, and a little bit here. And as Edward Mandell House wrote, because he's the one that thought up this plan between 1912 and 1933 and pulled it off over 3 different presidents. As he came right out and said, only 1 in a million will ever learn it. And then we have plausible deniability. Because we did it over several administrations, several presidents, several this, several that. There wasn't any one person responsible. Well, except for Edward Mandell House. So you know what he did? He refused to take a position in government. So he wasn't responsible, right? But he's the one that gathered all the bakers up at Jekyll Island and created the Federal Reserve under the Aldrich Plan. Big octopus. And he's the one that had Woodrow Wilson's ear. See, he was a big oil man from Texas. And he had Woodrow Wilson's ear. And he got Wilson to sign over the government. Wilson's last speech, he stood up and said, if there's only one thing I regret as being president of the United States, is that I gave away our country to a small group of greedy men. He admitted giving away our country. During that time, they created foundling hospitals. The whole plan, it had to start from foundling hospitals. And it worked its way right up to Eisenhower and his New Deal. And we have the whole Cestui Que Vie Trust Act to thank for it. So his whole plan was a con job. And so many people pulled it off that everybody had their own little compartmentalized piece. Nobody actually did it. Who do you hold accountable? Right? You can't hold him accountable because he wasn't in the government in the first place. Yet he was in the White House every day for about 20 years. But he didn't need the money, so he refused to take a federal position. See? So, anyway, where am I going with this? It's too hot, I can't think.
Kick off your shoes.
Take off my shoes?
Yeah, cool out.
You don't think these insulated hunting boots are making me sweat. So Genesis 2:7. And I, God, created man from the dust of the earth, and I breathed into his nostrils the gift of life, the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So what do we got to do? We've got to separate ourselves from here and be the state national that we were intended to be. All of our founding fathers were state nationals. We each lived in a nation state. We were a state national. State nationals were the arbitrators and creators of government. We, the people, created government. The U.S. citizen was created by government, by the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. They created government. They were created by government. A person, thanks to the Reconstruction Acts, Congress redesignated the word person to mean entity or office of. And a resident is someone there temporarily to do business. We need to inhabit the state we're in. We're all Californians, Oregonians, Utahns, Wisconsinites, Floridians, Massachusetts. We are the people of the state, we the people. We've never even done what it took, except not knowing any difference, so we mistakenly checked some box somewhere. But we've never gone through the process unless there was somebody born in another country in here that went through the process. Anybody? You're all born here? So none of us in this room has gone through the legal process to even be a citizen in the first place. But in the United States Code, it says we must repudiate it if we don't want it with the United States Secretary of State. Okay? And then we can jump back as a state national that we were intended to be in the first place and stop being this. Because the Supreme Court of the United States says, since governments chose to incorporate themselves, they must abide by all the same rules as any other corporation. The rules, codes, statutes, and ordinances and policies and even executive orders are not law. They are corporate bylaws. So can a Walmart employee show up at your house, kick your door in, and steal your kid with no due process of law? No. What would you do? You'd probably pop him right between the eyes with his cane. See, he's a trespasser. He's a kidnapper. He's creating all kinds of felonies. Right? So they can't do that. But the Supreme Court says, since governments chose to incorporate themselves, they must follow the same rules as any other corporation. Right? It stopped being de jure. What is de jure? Of we the people, and became de facto. De facto is without fact. That's when they started coming up with the term. Government operates through the consent of the governed. If we were in jail, we consented to be there. If they took our kids, we consented for them to take them. If we have to pay a ticket, we consented to pay the ticket. Isn't it contract law? We are supposed to have a viable contract. So what do they make you do? Make you sign the ticket. Nowadays, they don't even have to do that. The attorneys have figured out that all they need is your tacit agreement of being these three things and do whatever they want to you with no due process.
Doesn't contract law say contracts need to be fully disclosed?
Absolutely.
And or you can make an addendum to the contract?
That's right.
Sign it?
Absolutely. But here's the problem. Ever since April 11, 1953, the federal government took over our educational systems under the auspices of standardized testing and standardized students. And so a student in California is equal to a student in New York or a student in Florida. They all get the same textbooks. And they paraded a little lady named Jane Spalding around for 2 years to all the states. And Jane Spalding is the sweetest little, if you can picture the perfect teacher lady in your mind, close your eyes, picture her. That was Jane Spalding. Sweet little innocent lady. And they paraded her around the states under the auspices of standardization and that the states would receive federal money. So the states signed on to it. And she became the Secretary of the Department of Education on April 11, 1953. Well, 49 days later, they fired her and they put in Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller, a son of one of the most prominent banking families in the United States, a member of the Federal Reserve banking family. And his first speech, his acceptance speech, he said, I consider this the greatest position in our government by far. And the camera flashes started going on. And they said, the reporter said, you mean even more important than the President of the United States? And he said, absolutely. He said, you give me one generation and I'll change the minds and therefore the direction of the world. And he did. Back by 1961, it was already changed and done. It only took him 8 years. She lasted 49 days. They paraded her around for 2 years. Okay?
What year was that?
1953. Okay?
I think the Department of Education was created until Jimmy Carter in 1970.
Oh. April 11, 1953. Look it up, Jane. Small. Nelson Elementary Shrine. Look it up. Okay. What are some other things that happened between 33 and 53? How many people think we won World War II? Just dropped a bomb on Hiroshima, right? We didn't win World War II. We signed the United Nations Treaty. Every country we were at war with was a member of the United Nations. Even us. We were members. Germany was members. Japan was members. We signed the United Nations Treaty. Ended World War II. Well, what happened then? We gave them Manhattan Island. You can say his last name. Giuliani stands up on camera and he says, I don't have any control over Manhattan Island, just the rest of New York City. Manhattan Island is owned by the United Nations. So it's 50 miles on each side of the Mexican border. 50 miles on each side. How did we give away 50 miles of Mexican land? That didn't cover that side of the border.
That's true.
Okay? How did we give it away? Because they were a United Nations country too and they signed on to it. Now, do we know about it? No. Because no event has really happened in that area to know it. But in 2011, Twin Towers, New York City learned what little control they had over Manhattan Island. Okay? New York City learned a big lesson that day. Okay? So when you learn history, you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And when you learn history and fight the law and the courts,
I was listening to Alex Jones the other day, and he said all that immigration is all through the United Nations. They want to bring 600 million refugees to the U.S. by the year 2050.
the Secretary of the Treasury is not paid by the United States government. They're paid by the IMF. Okay?
What was his comment? I didn't quite hear.
I said that according to Alex Jones, all this UN stuff, they want to bring 600 million refugees to the U.S. by 2050. I don't think things are going to stay together that long, but this immigration deal, Dave Hodges, they're training down in El Salvador. You look at these groups that are coming, a lot of the guys are all military age. When you couldn't buy 22 shells, Obama was stockpiling billions of rounds of ammo to give to these. Remember him bragging about having an army as big as the U.S. Army, civilian? Well, that's what they're doing, and you need to show them that picture you showed me about Gitmo since Trump got in. Trump spent billions of dollars at Gitmo, and there's the big thing against Kavanaugh, they asked him about military tribunals. Already they're throwing him into Gitmo because the courts are corrupt. What he's saying, they can get him for treason, and Hillary can be thrown in there and seize all her assets, and end of story. We don't have to deal with any courts or Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals or attorneys. But at 600 million, they want to bring in the U.S. if they have their way. 600 million. Yeah. So you think this immigration is going to go away? It's not about helping the kids and that. It's about destroying America. We're on to the bastards. That's what it comes down to.
In December, right before President Trump's inauguration, that is an aerial picture of the buildings at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. That's the picture today. See how much construction has gone on down there? They've already put in 3,000 pedophiles in that prison.
I heard that they got the latest hospital in the world.
Huge. I got a friend that's down there right now. He was telling me about it, and I had to do some research. That's just what I do, but
That's incredible. Some of the stuff. This gentleman's got some excellent information.
A lot of documentation, huh? We were going through documentation for hours this morning. I was just throwing it out there too.
Well, it's part of the truth setting us free. We do not realize how powerful those words are. Even that one about the DNC that you talked about, where Constitution stuff.
You really want to bring that subject up?
Yes, I do. Don't want to confuse them with the facts, not hearsay.
Okay, all right.
I'd like you to tell us what goes on at your death with this trust account.
At your death,
Yeah.
did I not cover that?
You did, but
The sweep account
so
created so that just funds government.
all goes to the IMF or who's goes?
Goes into the United States Treasury's General Fund. And the books are kept on the GAC, which is an off-book registry.
So it's not traded with stocks? Stock market?
Prior, when it's in the Cesta QV Trust, it's traded.
So
But not the money
anybody can own
pool.
that paper?
Huh?
Anybody can own that paper if they buy it?
Sure.
What about yourself?
If I had internet connection on this, I'd show it to you right now, but I don't. I'd have to do it on my phone. Nobody can see it anyway. But you can pull up Fidelity.com and work your way through their website system and find it eventually. But you can go on gmeiutility.org, and it's pretty easy to find. All you do is hit the little magnifying glass in the upper right-hand corner, and it pulls up a little search box, and it says, search for an LEI. And you type in your social security number or your birth certificate number or your military ID number, and it'll pull up a whole list of companies that pull it up for him. He can verify what I'm saying.
Bullshit, why? You think this is all hearsay, and he showed you the whole hard fact. You think we've been had like nothing we've ever been imagine. I mean,
Okay? And you can pull up a whole list of companies that are buying and selling you today. Ever since your birth certificate was created, you've been sold through United States Treasury bonds. See, the minute they bond you with that bank, all that means is they're creating, your board says 75, they're creating $1 million of United States Treasury bonds. And those are available now for sale. Every child that's born. Another million is available for sale. They just create Treasury bonds. And any grandmother company, usually it's companies. Go ahead.
What was the bonds and trust still considering that?
They still exist.
Do they still trade it? Even though you are a state now?
Lives on in perpetuity. I can pull up my dead father and my dead wife's father, and I can show you how that they are being traded today. I can put their social security numbers in. It lives on in perpetuity. My dad's been dead since 1989. Not only that, I can make it even worse for you if you want.
We're getting, okay, we're getting, go from one thing to the
Yes,
other.
we are, a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know.
So what are the,
We're searching.
well, I can search for Guantanamo
Yeah.
pictures. I thought I ended that.
So, I get all this. We've been having. How do we become a state national?
Affidavit of,
Oh,
two old friends, is that mine?
that one's for you.
All right. So, yeah, we've been having big time. Where do we go from here? What do we do? To become a state national, I believe there's 3 documentations you should do. Why do I believe in 3? 3 is everything in the law. The rule of 3 matters in everything you do in the law. A judge can ask you something 3 times. You've got to tell a judge something 3 times. 3 pieces of documentation previously done in the law. Let's talk about that. Let's get rid of this stuff.
there's scripture that says in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall ever be established.
Right. Rule of 3 matters. So, I'm getting off track pretty easy. It's a problem with 3-hour classes. I can cram so much into you when you talk for 16 weeks. I can stand up here for 16 weeks straight and talk to you. I couldn't tell you everything. I've got 300,000 pieces of documentation on this computer on the iCloud. 300,000 plus pieces. More than that now. So, rule of 3. What was I getting at?
Three elements of trust.
Okay, thank you. The 3 documents I believe you need. The United States Code says you must do an affidavit, I'm going to shorten this, of repudiation to the State Department, Secretary of State. Secretary of State. Man, I came up with it. All right. Been talking for 10 days straight.
We don't have a Secretary of State, so who do we go to?
Yes, you do. It's the United States Secretary of State.
Oh, United States. Okay.
United States Secretary of State. What used to be John Kerry and Hillary Clinton, you know who it is now? Anybody know who it is now? Pompeo. Okay, affidavit of repudiation. If you have the ability to, and most of us Mormons do because we're good at genealogy, you do a patent of nativity. I can show you mine. All you're trying to do is show that your lineage existed in this country, and you only need one line to do it, to show that your lineage existed in this country before government was formed in this country. You've been here longer than they have. So you have priority. Then a deed of reconveyance. A deed of reconveyance. What is that? Simple. Take your dog Latin glossa name. Dog Latin glossa. Anybody know what dog Latin glossa is? I'm sure most of you do. It's your all capital letter name. All capital letters. You were registered at birth as a vessel. As a vessel. You came through the birth canal. You delivered at the doctor. You were issued a bill of lading. You were taxed. Okay? You think our federal government is trying to hide the fact that we are in admiralty jurisdiction? Can't be that far back, come on. Time marches on, doesn't it?
Conveying yourself back to the land.
You are. You're taking all your all caps name. You think the federal government is hiding the fact that we're in admiralty law? That's a brand new federal courthouse in Miami, Florida under construction.
Where's that to?
Miami. It's a ship at 4 docks. Okay? That ain't the only one. Start looking at it. Get on Google. Start looking at some of the pictures of the federal courthouse. Even the Portland one, Portland, Oregon one, which has been there forever, it's just a square building on the outside. But when you walk in the lobby, you walk through the front doors of the building, it's 6 stories tall with glass open atrium in the inside, but the wall of all the courthouses curved like a shit. it's been there 100 years. Okay?
Your all-caps name and what?
So your all caps name is you take your all caps name and spell it every which way you think you can. You see, in the military, they put your last name first, middle first name, middle. You want to spell it in full. You want to spell it with your middle initial period. You want to spell it every way you can think of spelling it. And you put it on a deed of reconveyance, and you go file it with your county, and you get a county stamp on your copy. Okay? Why? Why? Because this is what we were really getting to.
Does that file with the county attorney's office?
No,
County recorder?
county recorder's office online, just like these are filed. Okay? You might laugh when I tell you that that's the four most important words in the law. Anybody laughed yet? That's the four most important words in the law. Why? Because through tacit agreement, they first presume that you're a citizen, a person, and a resident as CPR, because we all need it when they're done. Okay? Then they assume you were a drug dealer when you were not, or you were speeding when you were not, or you beat your kid when you didn't, or whatever the case may be. They're making an assumption of guilt. Then they base it all on hearsay. And the American Bar Association has a nice little motto. If you read their journal, every once in a while they just throw it down in the little lower left-hand corner. And it says, no fact or truth shall be